For years, I dreamed of shooting with an anamorphic lens. The cinematic flares, the oval bokeh, and that widescreen magic are now achievable with this lens. The SIRUI Saturn 75mm t2.9 full-frame anamorphic with a 1.6 times squeeze factor. It's an incredible lens, and at the same time, it's more demanding than a standard lens, and this is something we need to talk about. So if you're planning to try out or even buy an anamorphic lens in the future, stick around as I break down everything you need to know about it. As a disclaimer, SIRUI sent me this lens for free and I get to keep it if I like it. As always, I requested to be able to express my honest opinions about the product. I wasn't paid to say anything in this video and they didn't request it to pre-approve the video before publishing. So first of all, let's see what are the differences between an anamorphic lens and a standard or typical lens in terms of the image they create and the specific aspect ratio. A standard lens like the Canon RF 24-70 f2.8 creates a typical 16:9 image that fills the entire screen. An anamorphic lens, however, captures a much wider field of view, but it squeezes the image horizontally to fit it onto the sensor. This makes everything look stretched vertically. To fix this and make people and objects look normal, you need to adjust the Y scale in your video editing software. Setting the Y scale to 0.625 unsqueezes the image. You get the horizontal field of view of a 47mm lens while maintaining the vertical look of a 75mm lens, along with black bars at the top and bottom of the frame. Now, I know it might sound complicated, but it's not. Here you can see the difference between the Canon lens at 70mm and the SIRUI 75mm anamorphic lens. Now let's have a look at these two shots. On the left I have the Canon lens, which is set to 70mm, and on the right I have the SIRUI anamorphic lens at 75mm. As you can see, the blurred background and especially the lights look very different because the anamorphic lens creates oval bokeh shapes instead of round shapes like on the standard Canon lens. And this is why the SIRUI lens is so special. An anamorphic lens is also creating a different type of flares, which you can see in movies very often. Compared to standard lens flares like you see in this shot, which looks fine but nothing is so special, anamorphic lenses generate horizontal flares, and this creates a special vibe in the clip, in the scene. It makes it look more cinematic. Now, this version of the Saturn anamorphic lens is creating neutral flares, which means it uses the same color like the source of the light, as you can see in this example. Also, the flares coming from the SIRUI lens are much more pronounced than on the Canon lens, as you can see, but you can also choose to have the other version of the lens that creates blue flares. So, this is very subjective to your liking, and to me personally, neutral is what I like to use. Usually, anamorphic lenses have been quite big, heavy, and very expensive, but now SIRUI has done something unique and different. What's truly impressive about this lens is its size, weight, and price, because with a carbon fiber barrel, it weighs only 472 grams, and you can choose the mount that fits your camera brand. For example, I got the RF mount version because I paired it with a Canon R6 Mark II. The lens is lightweight because it's small, only 112mm long and 65mm wide. It uses 62mm filters, so if you already have a bigger ND filter, for example, like 82mm, you can use a step-up ring to make it fit and save money instead of buying a new ND filter. In terms of price, this lens is $1,199 at this point on Amazon. And compared to other mid-range anamorphic lenses on the market, which cost up to $5,000, or high-end anamorphic lenses that can reach $50,000, this full-frame anamorphic lens from SIRUI is really affordable in my opinion. I will drop you some affiliate links in the description to all the gear that I talk about in this video. You may also find a coupon code to save 5% when you purchase a SIRUI anamorphic lens on Amazon. Now, let's take a look at some real-world footage that I shot with this lens, and then I will come back to talk about some other important aspects you should know. So what do you guys think of this lens? Do you like how it renders the image? Do you like the bokeh? Drop me a comment. I want your opinion. Now, here are some other things you should know about this anamorphic lens. There are no buttons and no switches here. This lens is fully manual. It has a manual focus ring and a manually adjustable aperture from t2.9 to 16. This is how cinema lenses work in general. You can pull focus manually using your hands or maybe attach a follow focus system. By the way, anamorphic lenses use t2.9 instead of f2.9. This is because t measures the actual light transmission through the lens and f measures light based on the aperture size. So t-stops are used in cinema lenses because filmmakers need consistent and precise exposure across different lenses and shots. For example, if two lenses are both marked with T2.9, you know from the start that they will transmit the same amount of light, making sure that the image brightness matches perfectly. This lens looks really strange from the front. I mean, the glass elements make the aperture appear oval, but when you look at it from the back, the aperture is perfectly round. And to me, this is fascinating. It's a fascinating design, and I'm excited to test out this kind of technology. The minimum focusing distance is 0.9 meters or 3 feet. It's not ideal if you want to get really close to smaller objects. I mean, you can shoot macro, but honestly, I didn't find myself needing that with this lens. Because for portraits or getting close to people, this distance is more than enough, at least at 75 millimeters. And considering the perfect balance between quality and price, I think this lens is actually impressive. Another very important thing to remember is that certain cameras, like mine, I have a Canon R6 Mark II, and maybe yours as well, don't have the option to de-squeeze the image coming from an anamorphic lens. So the LCD from your camera will show a squeezed image. If you get used to it, you can record with absolutely no problems because you will de-squeeze the footage later in the video editing software. But I strongly recommend an external monitor that has the option to de-squeeze the image while you are recording to see it better. The Atomos Ninja 5 does this thing, and I highly recommend it. I also tested the focus breathing, which happens when a lens seems to zoom in and out as you rotate the focus ring. And honestly, while this lens does have a bit of focus breathing, just a tiny bit, it's not something you need to worry about because at the end of the day, this is an anamorphic lens which is affordable, so you cannot expect perfection in every aspect like in very expensive anamorphic cinema lenses. What it does deliver, though, is an artistic look that's hard to achieve with a standard lens. If you're aiming for a cinematic look with anamorphic bokeh and that wide aspect ratio, I think this lens is definitely worth the money. This Saturn 75mm from SIRUI is actually part of a 3-lens kit, which are all at T2.9. 35mm, 50 and 75mm. You will find all of them in the description. And another very interesting lens that I tested in the past months is this one from Sigma. It's the first f1.8 full-frame zoom lens in the world. Click on the video on the screen to find out more about this lens that has exceptional image quality. I'm Christy, and catch you in the next one.